Sweet. He's one of my favorite theologians. He talks way up here, so sometimes it takes me a few readings of his things to understand fully what he's saying. But his ideas are spectacular, and this meditation was so good, I thought I needed to share it tonight. He talks about Hilary Mantel, who died in 2022, who was one of the finest novelists in the English language. She received nearly every honor the literary world could bestow for a book called Wolf Hall, the first volume of her trilogy on Thomas Cromwell. She deserved, according to Len Sweet, all of the honors that she received. But what he wanted to tell about was not her awards. It was the single sentence she refused to let go. In John Fox's Book of Martyrs, which was written in 1563, there's a brief account of a Lollard woman named Joan Boughton, burned at Smithfield in 1494. Fox writes, almost in passing, the night following that she was burnt, the most part of her ashes were had away of such as had a love unto the doctrine that she died for. It's Old English. It took me 3 times of reading before I understood completely what the sentence said. The night following that she was burnt, the most part of her ashes were had away of such as had a love unto the doctrine that she died for. When Hilary Mantel read that one sentence, she recognized it as a door. She knew what those burnings were. Public spectacle, attended by hundreds, sometimes even thousands. The executioner was skilled at his terrible art. If the wood was laid in precision, the body would burn in terrible sequence. Calves, thighs, hands, torso, forearms, breasts and upper chest, and then the face. The condemned sometimes alive for 2 hours in the slow fire. And Mantel knew what happened after. When the crowd dispersed and the mound of ash and bone had cooled, there were those who crept forward from the shadows. They knelt in the mud and the slime of Smithfield. They scooped the ashes into bowls, and then they marked each other, foreheads, hands, lips, with the name of the one who had died. From that single line of Fox, Mantel conjured one of the most quietly devastating scenes in modern fiction. She imagined the 9-year-old Thomas Cromwell as one of those gleaners when she wrote, when they had got a bowl full of the ashes, the woman who was holding it said, "Give me your hand." Trusting, the boy held it out to her. She dipped her fingers into the bowl. She placed on the back of his hand a smear of mud and grit, fat and ash. Joan Boughton, she said. Those ashes marked him. He became the prime architect of England's Protestant Reformation until he was himself consumed by the fires of a king's displeasure and met a fate not unlike Joan Boughton's. The prophet Isaiah wrote, "Then flew one of the seraphim unto me, having a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with the tongs from off the altar." Each of us has been sent at least one seraph. Not the gilded, symmetrical creatures of greeting cards. The seraphim of Isaiah are burning, six-winged, overwhelming, so terrible in their holiness that the prophet collapsed at the sight of one. These are not decorations, these are fire bearers. They come to us carrying coals from the altar of God, and they press those coals against our lips, against our hands, against our hearts, not to destroy us, but to unmake us for something greater than we had imagined for ourselves. They come to us in human form. They are the teacher who saw in you what you could not see in yourself. The grandmother whose faith was so dense with reality that doubt felt impossible in her presence. The author whose sentences cracked something open in you that is never quite closed. The friend who told you the truth when you needed it and loved you when you deserved it the least. John Wesley was a seraph for Len Sweet. So was E. Stanley Jones, for whom he once held an endowed chair. A man who dared to imagine that Jesus was not the private property of Western civilization. So were Mabel Boggs Sweet and Marie All, women whose names history will not remember and whose faith he is still trying to deserve. Our seraphim are not perfect. The roll call of heroes in Hebrews, looked at with honest eyes, is as much a rogues gallery as a hall of fame. Saints, as Pulitzer Prize-winning poet Phyllis McGinley observed in her luminous Saint Watching, are not manufactured. They are made out of a hodgepodge of good and bad ingredients. They lost their tempers, they got hungry, they scolded God, they were egotistical or testy or impatient in their turns, they made mistakes and regretted them. Still they went on, doggedly blundering towards heaven. Doggedly blundering towards heaven. That's how I feel I'm moving every day. Not very graceful, doggedly. It is, I think, a more honest description of discipleship than most of us would dare to offer, and more comforting than any of the polished alternatives. On Ash Wednesday, we receive ashes, and in hoping and praying for us to receive them the way Thomas Cromwell received the ashes of Joan Bowden. Not as a gesture, not as a tradition, not even primarily as a symbol of mortality, though we are mortal, and the earth waits to receive us. I pray that we will receive them as a marking, the way those who loved what Joan Bowden died for reached into the mud and the grit and pressed her name into one another in the dark. Because when the priest traces that cross on your forehead, something like that is happening. You are being marked by the faith of everyone who held that faith before you. Everyone who refused to let it go, who carried it through fire, who passed it forward in the dark. You are being claimed by a love that would not stay buried. Each Lenten cross is a coal from the altar of the Most High, carried to you by a seraph you may or may not be able to name. It's not placed there to remind you of your unworthiness. It's placed there to set you on fire. It's hot enough, if you let it, to turn every lump of coal in your life, every grief, every failure, every unfinished longing into the hard, clear beauty of a diamond. Receive it. You are marked. You are beloved. You are sent. You've been ashed. Now burn.